Spirituality is really not just light. It's a life of light and dark. And one of the spiritual traditions that I was taught in is very external focused. It's very light focused. It's the sun. And there is wisdom in showing up in light when you enter the world and not showing darkness. That's strategy, that's production. But it's not a true picture of a spiritual life. It's the same kind of false life that our whole society and structures are running on. And as much as I like participating in that, and I do, the real life is holding yourself. It's having a space for both parts of you. I am going to be practicing long form content, videos like this, where I just pick a topic and riff and just get my thoughts out there. It's 2026. This is a pretty cool year. This is my 32nd year, and guess what? My life isn't perfect. I'm not free of problems. I'm not a completely reconciled consciousness. I have physical pains, I have disturbing dreams, and I don't have it all figured out. And there's so much meaning. There are so many different perspectives and so many different answers that help you in life. There's definitely not a one size fits all solution. There are some practices that help around the board, but let's say that the meditative life is choosing to be meditative in life and choosing to be a little bit more intentional. And one of the great secrets, they never tell you this because when people say this, nobody listens to it. The quality of your life is just your breathing pattern. Your level of consciousness is just your breathing pattern. If your breathing is rapid, it's like disabling your brain and forcing you to be reactive. If you can't get clarity, if you can't get answers, you got to look at your breathing pattern. And of course, you can't change that right away, but that is how you get some awareness to see what's going on outside of you, to notice these things that are happening inside of you. There's a whole world of sensation happening inside of you if you're tuned into it all the time. It's always a party. As this guy said, I don't do drugs, I am drugs. But I'm looking at re-evaluating that which is seen to have value, what we value in the society. It's basically authority. We value status and authority. And I think status has a lot more weight. I think status actually is somewhat deserved by the person who has it. Authority, on the other hand, is taken by the audacious. It's taken by the one with conviction, and that's kind of why I'm saying I'm not a huge fan of this presentation of the light only, because what it teaches is authority and audaciousness, that is good in its own right, and it probably is the best way to live, to get you the things that you want, but it has nothing to do with a spiritual life, so to speak, or a deeper, richer, more intimate life, or more real life, less fake life. None of those things. Audaciousness does not have to do with being more real. It's usually the opposite. Creating a perfect presentation, which is a very valuable skill to have, does not help you become real, because you could say that there's really only two ways to approach life. If I make a false dichotomy here, you can try to pick the best and present it and hide everything else, or you can go the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that there could be variation waves of time going up and down with this specific time period in 2026. Raw, unfiltered content, I think, is going to resonate more with the collective and ourselves. And with that load of words, I think that what we desire is more unfiltered. I think we are getting a little bit tired of the dream fantasy life, that image is becoming a bit disenchanting. And what would bring us a little bit more of a sense of connection in this extremely isolating time for a lot of people is the unfiltered. There's a real personal motivation for wanting to go with the unfiltered, and the unfiltered is the only way that you can figure out what is running in the background. All your programs, all your thoughts. Who are you? I don't think that you can figure out who you are until you can sit with what's actually there, which is part of the reason why spirituality is not actually about the light. Because if spirituality has to do with being real, has to start with facing reality. And when we say that someone is not awake, part of that is that they have a self concept, which may or may not benefit them, that is not real. And reality is much harsher and more difficult. And you can only look at so much of reality at one moment, so you can never get a full picture. But we don't like ugliness, and that's totally fine to not like ugliness, unless you're trying to resolve your consciousness. There's something quite deep that I've realized is that darkness is not what we have a problem with. We have a problem with monsters in darkness, but monsters themselves are not darkness. It's just the location itself. There's nothing wrong with the location. There's nothing wrong with darkness. There is what's wrong with what fills inside darkness, including monsters and energies of darkness. So when we say, oh, that's dark, usually we mean that there is an energy in that space that is dark. The actual space should be the place that we are, the place that we have stillness. So whatever disturbances there are in the space, in a certain sense, ugliness fills up darkness because it's unattended. And someday, if you want to have a garden, you better attend to your garden. But I ascribe to that life is the way that it is. Life is as it is. That is, in 3 words, what I'm all about. I'm not all about life is as it should be or is as I wish it is, as much as as a person, I'm still going to try everything I can to change and create the life I want. That is an active part of me. That is the light. When we look at what light is doing or what the sun is doing, that is our motion. It's our moving forward, and it's where we get resistance. I remarked last night that when I was younger, I used to judge myself as bad for recreational activities like playing video games and even doing drugs. And I realize now that I just was conditioned and programmed to feel bad about resting. And maybe not everyone needs to rest. If you don't use your creative faculties, if you don't have anything that needs to recharge, if your work is simply mindless, then there's no need to rest. You could just keep going forever. I'm not that way. The faculties I use need to be recharged. And it's true that variation can be a different form of recharge. Different activities provide recharging, but I don't think that you can eliminate passive activities. So instead of trying to get to the spiritual goal or the vocational goal, sometimes just can you have a little bit more awareness of your situation? Because the world is unloved, that's its problem. And you, within yourself, have unloved that has not been seen, that has not healed. That is a process that's going to be going on as long as you're alive. At every moment, essentially, awareness is bearing witness to different, you could say, unhealed, unloved images. And setting quality of life aside, the quality of your experience of life is determined by how you are with yourself. It's not determined by how well you do. It's can you be with yourself when you're like this? Because if you can only be with yourself when you're doing great, you're gonna have a bad fucking time. And it's not an American solution. You can't just do it. It's not going to be pleasant. You're not always gonna have a good time. It's not always gonna be likable. The preference, it's fine. It's fine to have preference. And with preference, to end on a final note, I don't want to be a perfect authority. I don't want to be just audacious. I don't want my audaciousness to be empty. I don't want my audaciousness to be spineless or one dimensional. If I'm going to be audacious, I want it to be backed up to where no, it's not just what looks good. If you push into it, guess what? I've gone into the deep. There is substance behind me. It is not simply what sounds good. And it could be just me, but I think that people are, sorry, I believe that people are desiring depth and getting tired of good sounding content. Thanks for taking this time with me, and take some time for yourself to journal, meditate, light candles, turn on nice music, approach your work in a loving way, enjoy yourself, be with this experience as it's happening. And I hope that this comes through, that The image that someone has figured it out and is not suffering is simply not the human experience. That is not the experience of being human. The human experience is rough. And even though it may be true that meditation results in a much better experience and much higher states, to present that is, in a way, presenting partial truth. It's being very specific of what is being brought into the focus and frame. And there's wisdom in that. The reality of being human is imperfect. That's okay.